These, you guys, I'm a little hoarse today, dealing with allergies. Why did you choose Baltimore?
Low entry point, price point, as opposed to the district, right? It's like half the price. Well, it was when I started, which is in 2005. Homes were 40 to 50,000. So the low entry point, and I was purchasing for the purpose of cash flow, not so much as equity. My dynamic has changed now, so I want a little bit of both. Every property that I've purchased since then to today has doubled in value. I don't know if anybody here is from Baltimore or frequents Baltimore, but the numbers have changed, right? There are a lot of people investing in Baltimore, and it's because of that reason. So what once was 40 and 50,000 is now maybe 100 to 120,000 in the B plus neighborhoods, or the neighborhoods that are more desirable. All of Baltimore is for profit for the most part. I mean, living and investing, but because I don't reside in Baltimore, I buy properties in homeowner blocks, but put tenants in homeowner blocks.
And we speaking specifically in Baltimore City?
Baltimore City and the county. But 90% of my rentals are in the city, 6 in the county.
And Jay, why did you choose Baltimore?
For the same reason. So when I started investing in Baltimore, I actually started with tax liens. And then after I joined the coaching program, I started actually buying properties. But I didn't know quite what I was doing. I mean, I obviously had coaching, and how I started, I purchased them cash. So that was a little bit more affordable to me, as opposed to PG County or DC. But for like Marquis said, the same reason. So the cash flow was something desirable that I wanted. So I knew that obviously at some point I needed to stop being a lawyer and stop being an entrepreneur. So I wanted to start now in terms of getting that cash flow so I can buy some of my time back. And so Baltimore was a perfect place for me to start.
So we like to say, go ahead.
I have a question, because I seen some listings yesterday that were, I don't know if they were tax lien, you just mentioned something about tax lien, if it's tax lien or auction. But it was something like 10,000, 40,000, it said like put like a certain amount down. How does that work? And is that easier than buying one that you have to fix up? Because some of the ones I saw looked like they were already ready to go to put 10 in. So how does that work as far as auction?
So what you probably saw is an auction property. And so the 10,000 or 40,000 is where they want to start the bidding at. And so it'll bid from there. So typically speaking, like an Ashland auction, I purchase properties from there. They'll give you what they want to start at. They may or may not tell you the reserve, but they'll tell you the vacancy status, so whether or not it's tenant occupied, if the tenant is current on rent, if the occupancy is unknown. But that's that. Tax liens, you would have to register with the city, and it's a not a lot, but it's a whole big couple pages of properties that you would have to bid on from that. So in terms of your other question, in terms of whether or not you should purchase a property that's already tenant occupied versus something that you have to fix up, is really kind of your appetite. As an investor, I've done both. I would prefer a vacant property 110,000%. Because maybe that tenant was good for that landlord, but maybe they don't mesh with me. That was my experience. She didn't particularly like me, and I didn't particularly like her, and that's fine. And so I've also purchased on the auction vacant properties, and the house likes me and I like it. So that's it.
So the auctions are pretty good and not like too difficult or anything like that?
No, if you want me to give you a quick rundown as to how. So Ashland Auction, for example, is a place where I purchase my properties on auction. I like it because I don't have to be in person. You can purchase properties in auction either at the property, sometimes at the courthouse, sometimes in an office building. I've been to all 4. But I like to do it online because I can do it like, I don't know, in a grocery store, at the gym, whatever, right? They come out also a couple of days before, so it gives me time to run my numbers. So it gives me time to go down to the block and see if it's a place where I would like to, I got to go there too. So see if it's a place where I would even want to go, if there's a place where someone would want to live. Absolutely. Even if I'm familiar with the zip code, I still go. I also go in and I like only vacant properties. I don't do tenant occupied anymore, just period. Unless it's like an insanely crazy, disrespectful deal, I probably won't do it, just where I am now. Okay, so I'm running my numbers for the 10 that I have, and so my numbers will tell me how much I'm gonna bid, right? Keep in mind that you have to register with Ashland Auctions, so they'll require you to just put your basic information in, upload a credit card. The credit card is only for purposes of holding a small deposit when you register for that particular auction. Kind of like when you check into a hotel, how they hold it for incidentals. Okay, so I like to bid right at the end, like right where there's a couple seconds left. That's where I like to bid. And so also factor into your numbers that Ashland would charge, is it 5 or 10%?
5%.
A 5% premium on whatever you win. So factor that into your numbers in terms of whether or not it works. Ashland Auction would also require you to sign the contract by 4 p.m. that day. And then they'll also require you to send an earnest money deposit within 24 hours of signing that contract. So keep that in mind too, in terms of factoring your day-to-day things. And then you have 30 days to close. So I like it. It's simple.
So Baltimore is just a great way to get started investing. And so, but for some of us, like Marquis, he's built his whole portfolio there. Do you have a question, Michelle?
In dealing with the auctions, do you do that in your name or in your LLC?
Always in an LLC.
Okay.
For me.
Yeah, I would say always in an LLC.
Okay.
Does anybody wonder why Baltimore got to be where it's at and why we can buy so low there? Because we say that Baltimore is a great area to get started, especially for us that live in this area. But honestly, across the country, there's probably only 1 or 2 other places where you can buy at what we can buy at in Baltimore and then rent so high. But how did Baltimore get there? Because in the 60s and 70s, Baltimore was a thriving city. And some things happened to get it to where it is now.
Was it the closing of factories? And things
So a lot
like
of factories closed. What type of factories?
that? Industrial, like
Industrial, steel mills,
Steel mills, yeah.
the ports.
Right.
So Baltimore was in real good connection with like Detroit in the auto industry. And so when Detroit decided to, ship a lot of their stuff overseas, it dried up the whole auto industry and the ports for both Detroit and Baltimore. So the cities kind of mirror. Both cities are revitalizing, but that and then what happens is when there's no jobs and no industry, what happens to the people? There's a lot of despair. Unfortunately, there's a lot of drugs, and so there's a lot of people in Baltimore that was losing their houses. They were on heroin, things like that. And so you go to
They want heroin.
on the heroin. And so you go to different areas, even now in Baltimore, and they truly do look like war zones. I mean, like truly. Like whole blocks have been like almost like a bomb hit. And that's why we say in Baltimore, block by block, you actually have to go see the house. I had a property in Harlem Park where I negotiated down to $8,000 to purchase the property. So I went under contract for $8,000. Now, I bought it so low, Harlem Park, and it was on Harlem Avenue, is in West Baltimore. I was able to buy it so low because not only did it need a lot of work, there's a lot of board ups on the street in the same block. I think you saw that property. And so what I decided to do with that property was, instead of spending a lot of time trying to renovate that property and then rent it out, I had a company go in and clean it out. I went to closing, cleaned it out, and then I put it up for auction myself with Ashland Auctions and sold it that way. And so that's a strategy too. But what I want you guys to walk away with is knowing that in terms of Baltimore, it's a great way to get started. It's a great way to build cash flow. Over a period of time, even though there's not a great rate of appreciation, it does appreciate. I think Marquis said that some of his properties have doubled in value. The key to Baltimore, though, is you guys, is the number one key, in my opinion, is having a coach or a mentor. Because you can make a lot of mistakes buying in Baltimore if you don't know what you're doing. You don't have the right areas, the right strategy, the right contractors, the right financing. Like all those things need to be in place. And you need a coach or a mentor to help you. So to me, that's number one. And then it's about having your financing together, knowing the areas, learning the processes. And so I like renting to voucher holders. And so knowing that process. And then not even though you guys may not live in Baltimore, you've got to go check the property. I bought a property in Baltimore for $25,000. It was a four bedroom, 1 bath property. The lady, husband had just passed away. She lived in Upper Marlboro, Maryland. And she just didn't want to keep going back checking on the property. And so, we negotiated. Long story short, she wanted much more than that, but we agreed to $25,000. And it was because she didn't want to be an absentee owner. She didn't want to manage that property. And so Baltimore can work for you guys. It can work, but you cannot be an absentee owner. You've got to know the processes. Almost every time I call Marquise, he's in Baltimore, checking on his properties. My advice to you guys would be to get a property manager. I don't think either one of you guys have property managers, do you? So why do you self-manage?
Well, it just works better for me. I don't believe in paying 8 to 10% for somebody else to mind my business, so to speak. But most importantly, when I purchased a property, I renovated right? So I don't get too many phone calls. And the calls that I do get, I can outsource to my contractors remotely. So I don't really I'm not a slumlord, right? A lot of people just are buying a property, put a tenant in it, walk away. I think the mindset of understanding that landlording is a business. It's not just, hey, I got this property, got a tenant in it, and keep moving. People have to be managed, right? So the whole business must be managed accordingly. So I don't do property management personally because I'm hands-on and I have good contractors that I'm also a licensed contractor that I can sub out for the phone calls, very rarely that I do get. I too am about 85 to 90% voucher holder. So, which gives constant cash flow. Drywall and paint, I'm not emotionally attached to the property. I treat each property as an asset, right? So for me, property management is just another wedge for my tenant to call, just gonna call me anyway. So I skip that hurdle.
Why don't you, so you self-manage also?
Mm-hmm. I think because I'm in the nascent stages of my investing career. And so that's just a matter of practice, just me, period. Before I contracted out anything, I like to be able to do it so I'll know what they're saying to me if they're saying something that's true. But similar to Marquise, I do a certain level of renovations where I make the property, it may not be the prettiest property, it's gonna be neat, but it's gonna be a strong property, right? It's gonna be, the bones are gonna be good. So the electrical is gonna be good, the plumbing's gonna be good, all the stuff that makes or breaks a day. So that's pretty much why I do it too. And then also, like I said, I'm in the nascent stages, so I can save that 8-10% to invest in something else.
And so when we talk about renovation, go ahead.
Yeah, what you just said brings me to a question that I think there was a seminar was around while I was listening. He was saying something about the new requirement in Maryland for how many deals you could do without a license. Is that in effect? And I didn't really get it properly because I was watching on Instagram. I wasn't here, but as you mentioned, being an agent again, so I wanted you to please.
By the way, if you guys could go to Greg Bennett Invest on Instagram, thank you for that, and follow me on Instagram, Greg Bennett Invest. You'll get on Instagram and look at one of my videos and get confused, but just go anyway. So the video what you're referring to is wholesaling. And so with wholesaling, the state of Maryland passed a bill that you can only wholesale one property every 12 months without a license.
Wow.
Only
You can
one?
do more than two. You do more than two, you've got to have a real estate license.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow. But does that affect buy and hold?
No.
Oh, just also.
Just wholesale.
Yeah, so Gary, has that bill, that wholesaling bill, the final stages, has that passed?
We checked, we talked, like 2 weeks ago, and it looked like they had withdrawn.
Yeah, it was good. You had to worry about it right there. It's like,
Yeah, it was withdrawn.
Okay. But yeah, so what you're referring to was the wholesale law, or bill. We want you to buy and hold as many properties as you can. You do not have to have a real estate license to buy and hold. And then one thing I'll also say is buying and holding, brings the most wealth. And so ultimately, I would want you guys to buy and hold properties. To me, that's the ultimate. When we first went through the pandemic in 2020, as we were going through the pandemic, a lot of investors like us, some were suffering primarily because some of the tenants weren't paying. I remember having a conversation with Marquise, and Marquise said, I'm chilling because the government or Baltimore City was just putting up money in his account every week. Mine too.
They actually took over the tenant's portion during COVID, so which was a plus. Some properties, tenants have to pay a portion of the rent. The rent's $1,500, they may be liable for $200 or $500 of that money. But during COVID, Baltimore City, or I think the Section 8 program intervened and said, hey, we'll cover, not 100%. So no cash flow, no go. So for me, I'm voucher all the way.
So we're vouchers all the way,
Prefer.
especially in Baltimore.
You too?
No, I wanted to ask a question when you said vouchers. Do the people with vouchers take care of you guys' properties? Because I know a lot of landlords have problems with taking vouchers because some people don't take care of their properties.
There's no perfect tenant in my opinion, right? But I'm not emotionally attached. So it's drywall and paint. I'm not worried about that. But you're providing housing. Again, another reason why I don't property management, I do want to meet my tenant. I do want to see my tenant. Quote unquote, you're supposed to go, one way to see is to go see where they're moving from. But the type of rentals that I'm delivering are I'm going within the market. Greg has forced me to add central air and granite to my rentals. I'm not saying every rental for me.
That's not
He is kind of, I believe in Rome do as Romans do. So I've been in Baltimore since like 2004, right? But to date, my level of renovation has changed, right? It has upgraded, but I'm more focused on the mechanicals, new plumbing, things of that nature. I'm not breaking my neck for central air because a lot of people in DC and Baltimore, it's not specific to Baltimore, but window units is AC, right? And it doesn't elevate my money monthly. Now, if the house already has central air, I'll keep it, but I'm not running all new duct work and so forth. The cost doesn't make sense to me. But as far as the tenant maintaining the property, I haven't had any bad experiences from Section 8. It might not be the tidiest, but I don't live there.
Yeah, and I think it's a myth. And I think it's a myth that we have to get out of our mindset. The myth that the Section 8 recipients or the tenants, they tear your properties up. I've been renting properties out to voucher holders for a long time, just for a very long time. I've never had any issues. Now they've changed the Section 8 program. Now Section 8 will come out and they will do an inspection on the property. And they will tell the tenant what they need to do. And they will give the tenant 30 days to do those things. If they don't, they will kick them out the program. And some of the tenants it takes them 2 years just to get a voucher, or even longer once they get a voucher to get a house. They don't want to go back on that list. They don't want to get kicked out the program. Matter of fact, once they get kicked out the program, they can no longer come back in.
And let me add this, Greg. Sometimes it's the owner, the landlord, right? This is not a set it and forget it business, right? There's constant maintenance, maybe not monthly, daily, but if you, like I said before, you can't just buy a house, stick a tenant and walk away. We're human, people live in property, and when you're renting, you're calling your owner, your landlord. What I see a lot of times is people buy it using the BRRRR method, they refi, they get their money out, and they don't have any more money to invest back into the property. So when there is an issue and the tenant calls, the landlord doesn't have any money, right? A lot of these gurus are saying use your credit card, but to me, that's just debt after debt after debt. But the tenant has no recourse. So they're just simply saying, hey, my AC doesn't work. So you turn into being a slumlord because you're really not built to manage the property or manage the tenant. Because if the tenant says no dogs, I mean, if you don't allow pets, but you go to the house and see a pet, but you don't want to have a communication with the tenant to reinforce what's already in the lease, then that's just bad management as opposed to being a bad tenant. A lot of people don't want to be involved with the tenants. They don't want to talk to the tenants.
So one of the rules is, you guys, you're going to start off with a certain amount of cash flow, right? You're going to have a certain amount of expenses that include your mortgage payment and other expenses, maintenance, taxes, insurance, things like that. You are going to get the revenue from the tenant or the city or the county. You're going to start off with cash flow. Hopefully start off with about $500 a month in positive cash flow. That's positive cash flow for that property. That's not money for you to go out and spend. You put that money in an account. You take a look at that account maybe every quarter. And the reason I say that is because of what Marquise just said. If something was to happen, and something's going to happen, there's going to be termite issues, there's going to be, I'm just thinking about all of my latest with my tenants. I want the money for those repairs to come out of the money that they've sent, not out of my pocket. And so that money that comes in is not yours to spend right away. Okay? You're making money two ways. You are making money from that cash flow, but keep it in there. But then the real money, in my opinion, is the equity that we're growing equity. We're growing wealth. We're building generational wealth with those assets. And you've got to take care of each and every one of those properties that you purchase, knowing at the end of the day, you're going to have a lot of options when it comes to either retirement or along the way refinancing, like I did last year, pulling money out of one of my properties and then buying another property. You've got options. And really, as an investor, that's where the money is. And we use the cash flow in a way to maintain the asset that we have, okay? That's the main purpose of your buy and hold strategy.
Since you manage your properties yourself, did you set up a separate management company?
Yeah.
Within your entity and just do everything through
Yeah.
that management company?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I have a question.
Oh, I asked, did he set up a management company? And then manage it under his management company?
I do.
Okay.
Go ahead.
If this isn't secret to ask, the Housing Authority of Baltimore City they also give incentives to new landlords, to become landlords for voucher holders. So that's another reason why it's like pretty good to look into. I think they get like, if it's successful units, it's like $500 or $750. So it's depends if you, people sign up for it.
To become a landlord. Right.
To become a landlord, yeah.
Because keep in mind, there's a housing shortage, right? There's of affordable housing, rental, and there are recipients of vouchers gold, but you got to give them a nice place to live. So there are people moving from different situations. There's tons of vouchers for whatever reason. I just was explaining to Greg before this started. I have a property that I bought. Somebody wholesaled me a property, a 3-unit in Baltimore, and I'm just getting ready to sign a handicap voucher. Guys, handicap from the waist down. This particular program is going to build a ramp for him. The long story short, they give me $2,100. I didn't anticipate $2,100 for the basement unit. I mean, the basement is completely self-contained. washer and dryer, stainless steel, granite. You know, it's beautiful, but I was only asking for 1,500 technically, right? But because there's a shortage on disabled housing, need 36-inch doors, right? Preferably everything on one floor, no steps. That's the whole thing. He's wheelchair bound. 2,100. So that's $700 more than I was even expecting. I do have to do a few modifications, but I changed my 32-inch door to a 36, and I'm approved. So there's opportunity. Just got to get the housing.
How do you source, vouchers?
How do you do what?
How do you source them? How do you get them?
Or how do you get them? So the question is, how do you get the voucher holders? You want to answer that? I'll answer it. So in every municipality, whether it's a county, we're here in PG County, or a city, there's a Section 8 office. There's an office for housing. And so you start there. And so you go down to the housing office and you apply as a landlord. You apply for Section 8 voucher holders. And then you go through a process of having the property inspected, making sure that you have a rental license, making sure that you have a lead-based paint test done, you know, all those kinds of things. And then they used to have a site called Go Section 8, but it's called something else now.
Affordable housing.
Where you can market to Section 8 recipients. What we do is we have tenant placement companies that will place tenants in our properties. But there's such a demand that once you register your property, the recipients, they're at the Section 8 office and they get your properties and they'll call you. You go into a system and they call you. And then the tenant placement companies, and we pay them as if they're real estate agents. Like we pay like first month's rent to find a Section 8 tenant for us. And so that's basically how you find your tenants. It's just a little bit of marketing, but Section 8 themselves, they have a system for you to get the tenants. And we're talking a lot about tenants for Section 8. There's programs. Jay, talk about some of the programs that you use that are outside of voucher holders.
So another reason why I like Baltimore City is because in terms of renting, I have different options. So Baltimore City, for example, has a bunch of colleges, Coppin State, Morgan State. So if I wanted to, and I'm not saying I do all these things, I'm saying these are my options. So if I wanted to rent to students by the room, I have that option. If I wanted to do a rooming house, for example, also very popular in Baltimore City, I have that option. One thing that I do like as well is traveling nurses. So while they're not voucher holders, so a city or government official is not, or entity is not paying, they're pretty much going to pay you. So I like traveling nurses. Baltimore City has a bunch of hospitals and their nurses are always traveling, they always need places to stay. You can do Airbnb. Just keep in mind that there are certain laws and things that you have to come into compliance with, but you can do Airbnb. You can do veterans programs. Beyond Section 8 too, there's another program that my colleagues told me about. It's literally like Section 8, except they pay a little bit more. I just forget the name.
BRHP.
Yes. It's like sitting in a chair right there.
That's certain areas though, right? That's like certain residents.
Preferably the county.
Yeah.
That's where a lot of them, BRHP, I don't know, that's the acronym, like if you Google that. And for Section 8, it's actually the Housing Choice Voucher Program. We say Section 8, but if you Google Housing Choice Voucher Program Baltimore, it'll give you all the details on how to sign up.
So you can also do veterans. You can rent to the rooms to veterans. Similar to Section 8, they also have, like, if you wanted to rent like a whole house to veterans, they'll pay just like Section 8 will. You can do battered women's, organization will pay. There's so many different organizations. You have so many different things you can do. So I like Baltimore City in that I had a number of different options. You have options here in PG County and DC too, but yeah.
Marquise, Quick question, is it a program for the disabled, you were saying?
It's just, I think it's just making your property available for the disabled. So I reverse engineer it. I renovate the property and then promote it, but vouchers welcome is in my title, quote unquote.
Okay.
And I also added to affordablehousing.com, which used to be Go Section 8.
So like when you go to Section 8 or VRHP, you just let them know that your property is for disabled.
Yeah.
There's no specific-
Well, I'm a realtor, so I put it in the MLS
Okay.
and it comes to me. I use Zillow Manager and I put it in the MLS as an agent. And just in my description, I let them know vouchers are welcome because I can't discriminate, right? I can't just say I only want vouchers, right? A lot of times people have that stigma of, I don't want no Section 810, I don't want a voucher, right? So vouchers are welcome right here. And when that person comes or those applications come in, we look at them and sort them accordingly. But the disabled piece is a hidden gem because, again, it's not many people that, like this door in here is disabled. It's a handicap accessible. It's a ramp. The door is about 36 or 40 inch wide opening. That's for wheelchairs.
You start noticing that stuff, don't you?
Yeah. But I'm telling you, I was asking for 1,500. They gave me 21. I'm gonna start to make 36-inch doors.
And so everything that we're talking about, you guys, you're not gonna get it in this session. I mean, we're gonna be wrapping up in 20 minutes. And so everything that we're talking about, you gotta go do some research. And as I said before we got started, one of the best ways to get started, the best way is to have a mentor or coaching so that you don't mess up. I don't want you guys thinking that you're gonna rent a property out to disabled. You haven't read the specifications on the size of the doors or the size of the bathrooms and things like that. And so you got to do your own research or, be with an organization like ours, our coaching program, where we can tell you these things. Did you have a question?
I did. Just a question about the rental rates. I know like in DC, they set the rental rates based on neighborhood. Is that the same in Baltimore City?
It is. It is. And sometimes, unfortunately, like DC and PG County, sometimes what you see online
That's not what you get.
is not what you get.
That's a guide. Even if somebody calls you with a voucher and says, I have a voucher for 2,100, that's the maximum of their voucher. That doesn't mean that once they come inspect the property, they might say, we'll give you 1,794.
Now, so that's a good question. In some areas, the market rate, where you can get not renting to a program, just the market rate, sometimes is a little higher than Section 8. I still want, just me personally, Section 8. Somebody tell me why.
Guaranteed.
If you ain't get nothing else, get that.
It's guaranteed. That's stress off of me. They're being managed also. So I'm managing them as a landlord. The Section 8 program has certain guidelines to keep them in that program. For someone that needs Section 8, they need help. Unfortunately, maybe something happened in their lives where they can't afford to pay for housing on their own. Section 8 program for them is a wonderful program. They get their housing paid for or partially paid for. The number one concern of any human being is what? Is shelter. And believe it or not, a lot of people don't have it or they worry about it. That program is the best program for someone that needs that program, not a better program. And there's a shortage of housing in every area. And there's a shortage because, like the DC model, what has DC done in the last 10, 15 years?
Gentrify.
They've knocked down what? All the projects in DC have been knocked down, right? And so what have they done to the people who are staying in those projects? Guess what they did? They said, here's your voucher, here's your voucher. They was giving out vouchers like Oprah was giving out things at Christmas. And then now you go find housing. They're waiting for people like us to buy housing to fix those properties up and then rent it out to those voucher holders. The voucher itself, you guys, is a piece of gold. It's a piece of gold. It's giving someone shelter so they can raise their children. And sometimes it's giving them shelter in neighborhoods they could not afford by themselves on their own, with their own means.
You know, school districts, support this too.
Being around a different type of people. And so they're waiting for people like us to go to auctions or to find properties, however we find them, and to do some really good renovations and rent these properties out. So go ahead.
Hey, Greg, I know we hear about Baltimore, you just started talking about DC. I'm a realtor, and when I list a rental in DC, I have to buy a second cell phone, a prepaid, because your phone will ring 24/7. And in the District of Columbia, even if you have a 9-to-5 job making $80,000 a year, you can still get a voucher.
Yeah.
Wow. The cost of living.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
And so let me ask you a question. Your phone is ringing. What percentage of those calls are voucher holders?
99.
Really?
That's why I buy it. Yes. Mhm.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yes,
Especially with interest rates rising. 'Cause
yes.
mortgage on what,
You miss the
350,000?
opportunities for the other real estate.
Right.
Because your phone, so I would just always buy a dummy phone,
Yeah.
prepaid, and use that just to get the rental calls for DC.
Mhm. That's a good point, and it's real.
Yeah,
And so what we have to do is, we've been loosely going through the handout. And you guys can go through the handout on your own. What I want to do is just make sure that you guys understand the opportunity of Baltimore and what the opportunity presents for us. And so for me, I feel very fortunate to live where I live. I live in Bowie, where probably 30 minutes, 35 minutes to get to Baltimore. Baltimore is the #1 residential rental area. You can buy low, rent high there. We're really close to, I'm probably 15 minutes from the DC line. DC is a great area also for residential rentals. Difference being, the entry point to DC is a lot higher than what you can do in Baltimore. The trick in Baltimore, in my opinion, is buying the property right in the right neighborhoods, okay? We're not buying properties in areas that are what we consider D neighborhoods. We classify them A through D. A being, in Baltimore, what's A? Is Hamden A now?
A lot of A neighborhoods,
Like Camden,
Fells Point,
Canton, Fells Point, and many others. We're not buying in those areas.
What category is Dundalk?
Huh?
Dundalk.
I would say Dundalk is B minus, C plus. I own property in Dundalk. Dundalk is a great area. It's 212, the 28. 212, 21222. So I own a 2-unit in Dundalk. And so Dundalk is perfect. You can find a good deal in Dundalk. Just keep in mind that Dundalk is Baltimore County, it's not Baltimore City. Yeah, and so, but yeah, Dundalk is good. Dundalk, I bought Dundalk for $50,000. It's a 2-unit. And one of the units was already rented out. And what they were paying, paid my mortgage. So then I just had to rent out the other. So Dundalk is really good. Little to no board outs in Dundalk. What we're really talking about here, you guys, is building generational wealth. And we're just saying, as an entry point to building generational wealth, why not start where you can afford? And then if you want to move on from there, that's fine too. But as a good starting point, Baltimore is just great. I have been very reluctant to go to Baltimore. I started my career off, when I started my career investing, I was living in Adams Morgan, in Northwest DC. And so I started buying there, Adams Morgan, DuPont Circle, and then I moved over to Fort Lincoln, and then PG County, bought a property in Annapolis. Never wanted to go to Baltimore, but the more I learned about it, Marquise is always talking about Baltimore. I said, well, let me stick my big toe into Baltimore. Let me stick it in the water. And I've been there ever since. Let's talk about goals. You have a question?
Now, I just want to applaud you guys, right, for what you do for the county, the community, and us as individual investors. I've been investing for 30 years all up and down the East Coast. And this is a beautiful thing that you do. And I just come just to glean from anything that I don't know, because I'm always a student, right? So just to say that, I think we as consumers and investors, sometimes we get hooked on the final product that we see on HGTV.
Right.
I see so many of our culture losing their retirement.
Yeah.
And not learning, but looking at the TV and thinking they can do this. And they're going out and buying, like you said, the granite countertops.
Yeah.
You know,
Great.
I flip everything and my collar,
Right.
right? So I bought a mobile home for $15,000. In 60 days, I was sold and made 80 grand. So, but that's because I didn't get emotional of what I saw on TV. I actually ran my numbers, did the home inspection, and when you go out on these inspections, especially if you're agents, you'll learn that you can buy a house in 15 seconds when you walk in, because you know. I make it a point to know the price all the way down to a light switch cover.
Good.
So like you said, young lady, that no one can take advantage of you because you studied, you did your homework. And how I make a lot more money because I'm crawling underneath the homes at 60 years old. I'm hanging sheetrock and cattle sinking nails. It's easy. YouTube teaches you almost everything.
Right.
So I just applaud you guys.
It's free information for those that really want to learn.
Yeah, but just being transparent so that it is reachable. This dream is reachable for all. Thank you for that.
More than welcome.
No, thank you.
I think it's more of a, we have to execute, right? It's just go and do. You know, I've failed multiple times, but I failed moving forward. And because my circle includes Greg, Jay, people that have been there, done that, but not only that, we're in the trenches, right? I'm talking to doers, not people that are just kind of just. And don't get me wrong, there's a level of information that you must need, but constantly, you said it. This is a numbers game. It's not an emotional game. It's not, HGTV isn't emotional, right? Oh, that's beautiful. But knowing your numbers is important. Having good people in your corner, mentors, coaches, a system that you can rely on. I always use Greg's brain, regardless of anything, middle of the night, second guess it, but over time, right? Oh yeah, I mean, who wants to fail? But you can't learn how to swim, quote unquote, until you get in the water. So everybody in here, I would implore you to get at least one rental property, right? Or get, partner in on a rental property. Baltimore is ideal. I'm passionate about Baltimore. Again, majority of my retirement is in Baltimore, right? But I've grown to love it because I've seen it change. I've seen the blocks change. I've seen, most importantly, the numbers change. From when I first started in Baltimore to where it is today. Like I said, I'm a realtor, so I'm pulling comps. I'm looking at equity. I'm looking at cash flow. My accountant is looking at my equity and looking at the cash flow and also looking like, wow. But today, that number's different. The 40 and 50,000s are there, but you got to probably mass mail for them, cold call to get them offline, works better. Even a gym, if you're not into any of that, you can, I'm not going to say that word, but you can find them online from an agent. One of my mottos is if it's been online for 30 or 40 days, I offer them half the price. That's just because not everybody's into construction and renovation. Sometimes it's just totally turnkey. It's already been renovated, but the agent that has listed it or the market, we're constantly flowing in this market. It's shifting, right? Not just shifted. So one of the things I do, if it's listed in an area that I'm particularly looking at or something that I want that's already halfway done, I just offer them half the price. Sounds crazy, but you'd be surprised at the counter that you get back. and we can negotiate down from there. So it's more than one way to skin a cat, I'm saying, but you have to take action, you have to execute, because if not, we're just all here repeating ourselves.
So when you say you offer them half the price of
Yeah.
what they're asking for?
Yeah, so if it's listed for 200,000, like right now I'm looking at a 3-unit building, it's listed for it's listed for 269,000. It's way overpriced. It's not moving at all. This is a 2-unit building, but they've already done all the work. So I'm offering them 150, but they didn't talk. It's been listed for 64 days. I'm offering them 150, and I'm communicating back and forth at 150. Right? That's a 100K reduction. Yeah. So we're talking at 150. Might buy at 125, but I'm having communication and dialogue at 150. So, and that's on the market. But if you don't know, you don't know. Or if you're looking at 269, I'm not paying 269.
So in that example, with that building, what number, I mean, if you get to 150, that's gonna be great, but what's your?
So I follow the 1% rule, right? 1% of the purchase price, that's my rent. I'm renting for $1,500 or better, right? When I started in Baltimore, it was $800, $900, but based on the neighborhoods that I'm in more homeowner block neighborhoods. So my $1,500 is my threshold. Not getting a rental that I can't get at least $1,500 for, right? Rather I do a mortgage or pay cash.
No, what I mean is, the 269, you're offering 150.
Yeah.
What's the max that you would pay for that building?
150.
Oh,
And if I get that 150, then I'll do a home inspection, and then I'll come down off that 150 based on a home inspection. That's just my little, because they can't move it.
Right.
And 90% of the time, that buyer bought it wrong. They renovated too much. I also look and see who the buyer, see who the owner is. So they're out of town, in Pennsylvania, New York. They over and did everything, right? And they more than likely got a hard money loan. So the pressure's on. Money's expensive today. So I know all those type of things. So 150 is about where I am.
Every day, $6 costs.
Yeah. They just want to kill the pain. When you make a mistake, sometimes you just want to walk away from it. And the agent will tell you that indirectly by today. They're motivated. They need to move it. You can't move it in 60 days. So just get your money back.
You mentioned home inspection. When I'm doing the buying homes, I will have the owner
Yep.
hire the home inspector.
Okay.
I'll just pay for it. And then when they come back with that laundry list of everything that's wrong with it,
Yep.
that gives me more negotiating.
Agreed. So that's part of one of our tactics, right?
Yeah.
When you get under contract.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we should get that. That's a tactic, right? So the inspection is the inspection. We know we're not buying a perfect house, but even though I'm an investor, I'm a savvy investor, I want the number low because I'm buying now with tomorrow in mind. I'm not buying on wishes and prayers and hoping that, because Baltimore, ever since I've been in Baltimore, it's always John Hopkins. John Hopkins. John Hopkins about his house. So this is going to change in the future. A lot of the neighborhoods have not changed. I've been there almost 17 years. So I'm buying based on no board ups, no liquor stores, B+ neighborhoods. If one of my children had to have a home, could they live in this neighborhood? Could my wife get out of her car and go in this neighborhood? Right. That's bottom line. In addition to comps, right? But that's personal to me. But other than that, I'll take it. Hey, Tosh.
When you talk about inspections, does that ever cause you to lose the property? Because I had a property where I said I would do an as-is inspection, but the next person said that they didn't need an inspection at all. So I find myself sometimes in that situation. I feel like I need an inspection at least to know what I'm walking into.
Yeah.
But there are people out there that are just gonna buy it.
I'm doing everything contingent. Two things. I'm buying cash, but I'm doing everything contingent either on financing. I have two options. I have multiple options, but the number of options. Home inspection for me is just a contingency. Another room to negotiate. Sometimes I might be going to wholesale the property. So it just gives me different options to do. So the home inspection is just a contingency.
But do you
We know
ever
it's nothing
lose it
perfect.
because of that, because you're putting in the inspection as contingency?
Yes, I always make it a contingency. I'm never just cash as is, walk away. I can advertise and market for that, but it's always something to buffer me. I mean, something could happen in between, right? Or I might have an investor in my portfolio, in my contacts that will pay more. So I might make a quick 50 to 100K just by putting A with B.
I would say, to answer your question, I would never buy a property without doing an inspection. And so what you guys have to understand is buying and holding real estate is almost an exact science. Like, you got to get everything right, because if not, you've got a big headache on your hands. And I mean, we have so many stories, but you buy properties and you go to closing, and then you get into the property and something goes wrong. which could have been prevented if you did an inspection. And just looking at this room right here, we don't know what's behind the walls. We don't know what the amps are in this room. There's a lot that we don't know that an inspector will know. And we don't want to buy a property and lose money. And so we have to be almost exact in what we're doing. And in Baltimore, you guys, there's lots of opportunity. There's a lot of opportunity in Baltimore. And so you find one property, if everything doesn't fit, you must have quit. Walk away. That's what I would do.
What is good neighborhoods right now?
I think that's the golden, we talked about that on the outset. And so I really don't, it's a tough question because I think every zip code, for example, has good neighborhoods and has challenging streets and blocks and things like that. And so you just have to find a deal and then assess whether this is going to be a good area for you. Like the Pimlico area. There's some investors that will invest in the Pimlico area. I won't. And so you just have to go and see for yourself. And there's other areas of Edmondson Village that's good for me, might not be good for you. It's just kind of where your stomach is. I mean, we could just kind of rattle off a lot of neighborhoods. We were talking earlier, Cherry Hill. You guys familiar with Cherry Hill? I think Cherry Hill would be a good place to invest in now. Now, would I have said that 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years ago? No. But why am I saying it now? Because they're revitalizing that area. They're knocking down the projects. They're putting, those planned unit developments there. And so I want to ride the coattails of that development where I can buy low now. And by the time those developments are finished, my property's finished and then the neighborhood is revitalized. And so you do want to look for areas like that. As I said earlier, Bel Air Edison, and I only know Bel Air Edison because of Marquise. And he said, that's a good, because I asked the same question. He says, I like Bel Air Edison. I went up there, I said, well, shoot, I like it too. So I just started finding properties there.
Let me chime in, Greg. I think that you can Google Baltimore neighborhoods, get a list, and go down and touch it. Because this is where your money is going to go, right? It's not just, I can like Bel Air Edison, you can go there and don't like it. You have one side of Bel Air Edison is great, it's thriving, it has appreciating comps. You have another side that you probably wouldn't get out your car. But that's all throughout every city, I believe. DC, Baltimore is no different. But if you're afraid to go and touch it and walk the blocks, if you don't feel safe, then you won't buy, right? Another rule of thumb is to find a good restaurant. See where you want to invest. Invest means put your time, your money, your energy, and see how people live. Sometimes I've looked on blocks. I look at the numbers because the numbers work, but does the block work? I get wholesalers send me deals all day long, but half the block is boarded up. They don't show you that. They show you the one house. You go down there, it's half boarded up. You got things going on in the corner. It doesn't work.
Go ahead.
That's my question. Like when you talk about block by block, right?
Yep.
So I had this property in Pigtown, which when I got the comps from the person, they said that it was going to be, it'll appreciate, right?
Yeah.
Yes, across from a West Cross or something,
Yep.
that is next to the hospital, so that is high. But that block, when I went to visit it, I saw the corner boys. It was a deal being done right in front of the house that I was walking into.
And so you wouldn't see that from the internet.
Right. And so to me, it didn't seem like that block was ready. But then it's like, how do you know that block isn't the next? Like they're not moving down, because I think they're pushing things back a little bit.
It's research.
How you
It's
know?
time and delivery, right? Like where I'm at in my space now, based on where I've been, I'm not trying to buy in Canton, Federal Hills, because I won't get the cash flow there. And the equity has already been made, but I'm also not trying to buy in 1500 block of Ramsey, which is in Pigstown, Washington Village, right?
Mhm.
I'm a sweet spot in between. So I get it from just my basic rule of thumb. I'm not buying on any boarded up blocks. You say corner boys, so no corner boys, right? I really don't want a convenience store locally because that's a crowding space. But I want homeowner blocks. So I'm more up, 21215, 21214, which is Hamilton neighborhood, which is homeowner blocks. They're watering the grass, where I would live, right? Where I could lay my head. And I'm trying to stick a tenant in that neighborhood because I'm going to get equity and I'm going to get cash flow and I'm going to get I'm going to get a better tenant, better quality tenant, if you would. So a lot of that is just foot research. That's more of you going down touching it, not because I like it, because you like it, right? Also, your insurance companies, that matters. When you go to get a homeowner's insurance, they know the fire blocks, they know the drug blocks, they know the vacants. They ask you, is it vacant? They'll drop you, right? You say it's not today, then 2 weeks later, there's 3 board ups on the block.
But you can't do Section 8 if you have.
More than 20% or something of the block being boarded up. I just don't try to board ups. This is a deterrent for me, period, today, and I'm sure it will be tomorrow. Dilapidated. It will change, hopefully, over time. But again, I've been there 17 years, and some of the blocks are just a block. They just haven't gotten there yet. I'm not trying to do hopes and wishes, right? I'm just trying to get in. And it's enough of Baltimore where you don't have to try to be, unless you're buying a whole block.
Right.
Or everybody says, let's go buy these last 2 blocks in Bolton Hill that's boarded up. That's different. Right now, there's a lot of us going together. But 2 or 3 or 1, I'm just going to get in where it's already proven. Because you got to manage.
Go ahead.
That was my question. Do you guys ever combine investments and decide to do that? Like, okay, Ray, you guys are going to like just go buy the last 6 houses. Like, have you ever done that? Like,
It's easier said than done. So we've got a block of 6, 7 homeowners. Some of those homeowners may be the government, they may own, and then they're all individually owned. If buying the block, if every house on the block was owned by one person or one entity, that's easy. But now you've got to call each and every homeowner and negotiate with them. They may not be ready to buy. And if the federal government, the local government, Baltimore City owns the property, they've got their own programs. So it's not that easy. Where I see it being done is where the city owns the whole block, and the city will sell that block to like a nonprofit developer, but more specifically to a nonprofit developer. That's why I see it being done.
It's called vacants to value. That's the program that Baltimore had. Vacants to value. Yeah, they'll give an RFP, a request for proposal, for an investor, developer to come say, hey, take these 32 houses, or take these 20 houses, and they'll sell them to you like that. That's from the city to you as the investor.
So you guys, we've got to look and find the right properties. We've got to run our numbers, right? And then we've got to get these properties financed. Because as much as, like Jay, for example, she buys her properties using cash. And then Marquise does too. I have, that's not my preference. But we will buy the properties cash. The problem with that is all of our cash is there, right? At a certain point, we want to refinance and get our money back. The Burr method. You guys familiar with the Burr method? And so what type of financing is should you be getting for Baltimore? I've got Tarsha Philibert here. Tarsha, you want to talk a little bit about the financing?
Sure.
You want to come up here or you? Everybody give Tarsha a hand.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So the financing piece, this is, hi. I'm just gonna stand, this is high. So all of you, as Greg just said, you want to acquire properties. You want to acquire properties and you need money to do so. And so what are your options for the funds to acquire the properties that's going to permit you to generate wealth and to be able to leverage the equity in the property to purchase more properties? That's always your goal. And so the first question question is, how do you obtain the financing if you choose to go with a lender and not use your cash to initially purchase the property? And then the second part of that is, if you do use your cash, how do you take the cash out of the property so that you can use the funds to purchase additional properties? That's how you build your portfolio. That's how you build wealth. And so we'll touch on the first part first, the financing to purchase an initial property. There are two ways to purchase properties. You can use your income if you are working, and income can be derived from a W-2 if you're working from a company, or if you're self-employed, looking at your tax return. So that's one option that requires income documentation to qualify you for a loan. The second option is using the financials of the property. And so Marquise talked about buying right, the numbers. That's super important regardless of whether you're an investor or not, but importantly, when you are using the financials of the property for purposes of a loan. And so there's an acronym called DSCR. That's debt service coverage ratio. And essentially what that means is the lender is going to look at the rental income that's coming into the property and divide that by the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, and come up with a ratio. And that ratio is going to dictate the terms of your loan. So how much your monthly payment is going to be, what your rate is going to be, and how much money you have to put down when you purchase the property. So those are the three components: your rate, your monthly payment, and the amount of money that you have to put down. Obviously, or maybe not obviously, but your credit score is always going to be a factor. And so they're always going to look at your credit score, and that's also going to dictate the rate that they will offer to you. With the DSCR loan, you do have to own your primary residence. And so you do have to currently own the home that you live in order to qualify for the loan. And the reason why they want you to own your home is because they need something to determine how you make home payments, how you make your payments, because it's a risk factor for the lenders. And so they're going to look at your mortgage statement, they're going to look at your 12-month payment history, and based on that criteria, determine whether you qualify for a DSCR loan. Since again, they're not using your income to qualify, they're using the property to qualify. One other very, very, very important factor for the DSCR loan is the appraisal. And the appraisal includes the value of the property, but then also the market rent comps. And so when I say market rent comps, similar to an agent running comparables for you, determining what the value of the property is, the appraiser is going to run the comparables of the rental market and determine how much rent the property will fetch. And so that is the part that kind of can unravel very quickly. And so I encourage you, because that's really what the lender's looking at to determine the DSCR ratio, as I mentioned earlier. And so if that rental amount is low and your mortgage payment is high, just think about what that's going to do to the ratio. It's going to decrease the ratio, and your cost for borrowing the money is going to go up. And so how do we navigate that? It's very, very important that you run your own comps when you're looking at property. So that either means if you're an agent, run your comps and determine what the rental value is, market rental value is for the property. Or if you're not an agent, ask an agent to run those comps, because it's really important for you to know how much money is the appraiser going to think that this property is going to get on a monthly basis. And I make that distinction because in this day and age, with short-term rentals, with renting out rooms, even with Section 8, you might think, oh, I'm going to rent out each room and get $800 per room. And so if you have 4 rooms, 8 times 4 is 32, I'm going to make $3,200 a month. But if the appraiser goes in and determines that the market rent comp is $1,500 a month, that is what the lender is going to use, the lower of the two, the $1,500 a month. If your mortgage payment is only $1,500 a month, then the ratio is 1. If your mortgage payment is more, the ratio is going to go down, and that's going to dictate the terms of the loan. And so it's very, very, very important that you do that homework up front. It's very important that you do that work up front so that you can know what to do. Yeah, so my child is sick.
So you guys, the financing piece is also important, or just as important. And so let me ask these guys, what are your goals? Let's start with you, Jay. What are your goals? And are you going to stay in Baltimore?
I will stay in Baltimore. I like Baltimore. I have taken a liking to PG. I'm not really, so the only thing is I need to be able to access my property. So I mean, I'm not partial to Baltimore as opposed to PG County or DC. I know you mentioned it earlier, places like Detroit and Ohio, while I can probably buy like I buy in Baltimore City, I can't get to the property. That doesn't work for my personality. I need to be able to access it quickly. And can I just make a quick note in terms of my goals? So when I was listening to the young lady talk about her experience, to be honest with you, I don't have 30 years to put in. I just didn't. I know I don't. So why I became a part of the coaching program is a mentor has always been like a cheat code for me in any profession that I do. When I started at the law firm, I found a mentor. When I started my business, I found a mentor. And so when I wanted to get deeper into real estate to really hone in on buying some of my time back and then also building generational wealth, a mentor was obviously something that I look for. And so what I have found in terms of this program is that I inherit all of his decades, centuries of experience. I had to get him back. Centuries of experience. And I get to kind of bypass that. Even so like I said, I invested in, I bought probably 31 tax liens before having ever met him, 2 plots of land. Some of them were jackpot, some of them were not. I didn't know what I was doing though, I just did it. Even talking to him, he was like, oh, just do this and then sell them like that. And I was like, perfect. So what I'm saying is, again, even the mistakes that I have made, I'm able to correct them by having him. It's a cheat code. Mentorship is a cheat code. Not only am I buying into him though, I'm buying into a community, a camaraderie of people who are standing alongside me, interested in the same thing, freedom and wealth, generational wealth. We're very generous with our resources. We have the same mindset. I tell people all the time, and again, it's a caveat, there's really nothing special about me. That kind of is, but you know what I mean? For purposes of this conversation, there's nothing special about me. The only thing that makes the difference between me and someone else that's differently positioned, that's 33 years old, that owns multiple rental properties, is that I decided that I was going to take action. That I was worth the freedom, and that I don't have children yet, but that my niece was worth the generational wealth that I'm going to pass on to her. Okay.
That was very good.
Oh, thank you.
Marquise, what's some of your?
I want to echo Jay's sentiments. I too am attached to Greg from the start. I started and kind of fumbled with no association to Greg, but thinking I could do it on my own. I was working a full-time job, went to a boot camp such as this, and I just quit my job and went to Baltimore and started renovating properties and just had a big catastrophe. Lack of knowledge, right? Lack of association, the whole nine. Fast track forward, I became a realtor, met Greg, selling real estate as an agent, and just started to understand more about close proximity to somebody greater than you, right? I'm a strong believer of it takes a winner to make a winner. So I attest, I wouldn't have 20 plus doors if it wasn't for the information and knowledge that I've acquired from Greg, right? So the platinum coaching to me has been far, it's underrated. And not only just Greg, but his network, his brother Keith. I've bootlegged and done wholesale deals off of Greg's network at no charge, quote unquote. An expertise of information and knowledge. And where I'm at in my life, right? I'm looking before I leave. I'm always trying to prepare 7 to 10 years out. I never anticipated this, right? The income, the cash flow, the whole dynamic, navigating, paying cash for properties, wholesaling, and all that. If I didn't have that structure that I learned from him, so I just wanted to toot his horn, if you would, from that. So anytime he had asked me to speak, especially Baltimore, which is a sweet spot for me, mainly because I lost so much in Baltimore and I came back and got it all again, right? So that's the difference of having mentorship, not having mentorship. But as far as goals, I'm going to just stay the track that I'm on because it works for me. It works for my family. I'm seeing fruits of my labor, and I enjoy what I do. Like I said, I'm a realtor, a wholesaler, investor, contractor, project manager. I mean, all things real estate. It works for me. I'm even toying with commercial at this point. So yeah, that's it. I mean, I'm not changing the course. I don't foresee me changing the course. There's an end goal, but right now I enjoy what I do. So I'm not, I'm building my retirement.
We got Andre. Why don't you stand up, Andre? Andre's one of our investors. What are some of your goals, and why do you invest in Baltimore?
I invest in Baltimore honestly because it's very cheap, and Baltimore is a nice city actually if you actually get out there. You know, you got a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of people, a lot of buildings, a lot of government jobs, a lot of stuff out there. So it's a good rental, and you can buy low and rent high, buy low and sell high. So that's why I like Baltimore.
All right, thank you, Andre. Any questions, you guys? We've talked a lot about coaching and mentorship. Keith, why don't you stand up and talk a little bit about our coaching program?
Yeah, so our coaching program is really doing well. A lot of our students are really seeing the fruits of marketing themselves correctly, and really taking action, not just coming to forums like this all the time and taking notes, but actually doing, picking up the phone and calling, knocking on doors, going to auction sites and the like. And so we want to offer that to those of you who are not, attached to a program. As Greg likes to say, we think we have one of the best coaching programs here in the area. We do have an Easter special. If you're interested in signing up today, got to plug that a little bit. But we're already at the first quarter of the year. And so we got to ask ourselves, what do we have to show for it? And what can we do in the future to get to that end goal, maybe by the end of the year, of holding a property in Baltimore? So I'll be around if you have questions. At the very least, you can get a free consultation with me for a half hour. We'll sit down and kind of plan where you are now and where you're trying to go. And so I'll be here if you have questions. And
I have a question for you, Keith.
Yeah.
I know you guys conduct some tours of members. Is that only open to the mentorship members?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And we do it every month. As a matter of fact, our next tour is going to be on the 15th.
And they talk about your property after
It's
they
real
leave
bad,
out.
real bad.
Real bad. It's
Yeah,
not good.
yeah.
No more touring my
It happened to
property.
me too.
No
I'm
bad
going back
stuff
and
to
doing
say.
more renovations because.
You don't have this, you need to have that.
And so he asked a really good question, you guys. And so nothing in life is free. And, people have asked, can I get into your coaching program free? Can I go to your boot camps free? All those kinds of things. 100% of the time, you guys, those people fall by the wayside. Number one reason, there's no skin in the game. You got to put some skin in the game. You have to invest in yourself. And so we do tour my properties. We've toured Marquise's properties, Tarsha, Jay's, each other's. We encourage each other. They get encouraged and motivated by not just me, but everybody else. We have a boot camp coming up April the 29th, where it's an all-day boot camp. It's Saturday at Martin's Crosswinds. And then part 2 is a tour on the 30th, that Sunday, where we're going to either tour some of our properties or tour some foreclosures that you guys can buy. So I would take a look at our boot camp. I think it's on page 3 or 4. Harry's in the back. I think Jabari's in the back. Take a look at that. You guys have to invest in yourself. Somebody said it's the coaching and the mentorship. And we talked about Baltimore. Hopefully, we haven't talked about Baltimore in a way that you think it's easy, because it's not. And I've seen a lot of people lose money because they're not doing their due diligence. Some people very close to me, but didn't call me until, everything went wrong. And so Baltimore is a great area to invest in, but you got to make sure you do everything right. Tarsha, any final words, any suggestions for them if they're interested in at least the financing? Should they come talk to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to have the education about the financing piece and understand what your strategy is, both short-term and long-term, but then also understand, what the lender is looking for, and try to get ahead of that. Try to understand the documentation, understand the numbers, how they calculate their numbers and what they're looking for, so that you can be a savvy, smart investor and not in a position where you're either not understanding what the lender is presenting to you, but then you also, when you're looking at deals, ultimately what is needed in order to make sure that you're getting a good deal. Because ultimately, you want to make sure that you're making money. You want to make sure that you're not buying the property, but then you're not cash flowing on the property. That's really important for an investor. And then you also want to know what the cost of the loan is. How much is the lender charging you? What's the amount of money that you're borrowing? And what are you paying over time? And so think both short-term, as you're looking at properties, about what the cost is going to be, but then long-term, what is your strategy? Is your strategy to refinance out of the property if you paid cash? Is your strategy to refinance because you want to take money out of the property? And so if that's the case, then you need to make sure you're buying properties that are going to appreciate in value. Maybe your strategy is to cash flow on the property, and equity is not necessarily a primary consideration for you. So then if you know that, then you navigate and you structure your deals accordingly. And these are all questions that you need guidance on, you need education, and you need help. And so seek the help. Don't go at it alone, because that's when you lose money. That's when you lose the enthusiasm about being an investor. And so ask a lot of questions, get the education, and have a plan, and have a long-term plan. So it's not just, I'm going to buy a property today and that's it. What are your goals? What are your financial goals? How much money do you want to make a month? How much money do you want to make a year? What's your plan for retirement? And how will investment properties afford you the retirement that you're looking for? Ask yourself all of those questions, write it all down, and strategize with professionals who can help you. And I think that needs to be our mindset, is not just one and done. It has to be a long-term financial goal in order to build the wealth that we're all here and are hoping to attain for the long term.
Any questions, you guys? Go ahead.
Who are your competitors?
Are you talking to me?
Your business, your company, who are your competitors? You find yourself, this particular program.
I can speak to the competitors because I came in with another program. So I can speak to that. There are many other programs that offer, at least on its face, the same resources, the same training, and they present similarly. But I think ultimately you can go out there and explore those programs. I've gone to other programs before coming here, and I sat in boot camps with other programs. I paid thousands of dollars with other programs. I came from New York, and I was with that really big conglomerate, and I'll just say the name because it doesn't matter, Fortune Builders. I attended their sessions, but I think ultimately you have to find the place that feels like home, and you have to find the place where you're not just a number or a transaction. You are a person that the leader wants to invest in and wants to make sure that you are growing and you're meeting your goals. And I think that that's the distinction between this program and the quote unquote competitors. I think Greg cares, I think Keith cares, and they're invested in making sure that you're successful. And so go out there and see what the other people are doing and compare and contrast. And I think with confidence, you'll come back and say, this place, these people care.
Very good, thank you. I owe you. I'll buy you a chicken sandwich. Anybody else, any questions or any takeaways? Any takeaways, you guys?
I wanted to plug, Greg, I just want to say this about Platinum Coaching is we're going to hold your hand every step of the way. And so, as Greg likes to say, your excuse for not being successful is not going to be because of not learning what to do. It's about going out there and doing. And so for every step you take, we're going to vet, was that the right move or not? When it comes down to marketing yourself or running the numbers, you're going to get that support from us. So.
Again, on page 4, you guys, we do have this boot camp, all-day boot camp coming up, where I'm going to talk a lot about how to build a predictable real estate investment business. We're going to have a number of speakers there all day, lots of food all day. It's an incredible price to register now before the prices go up. And then day 2, we're actually going to be out in the field and going over how to buy the properties. We're going to go over the level of renovations. We're going to go over our repair costs, what everything costs, all of those things. We'll probably be in Baltimore, but maybe not. And then after we do the tour, we're going to have a networking session at a restaurant, and that's all included in the fee, where we're going to network with each other, talk about what we just saw, and have a nice lunch together. And I think that's how you get started. But like Jay said, you got to jump and you've got to take action. You've got to say to yourself, this year is going to be the year that I'm going to buy either my first property or another property. And I'm going to buy that property right. We talk a lot about Baltimore because it's a good place to get started, building wealth. And again, this whole session is just about building wealth. But you've got to take action. And we see that a lot of people have taken action, but we need a lot more. We need a lot more of you guys, because we see a lot of familiar faces. But what are you doing with this time? You've got to take action. We have, Keith talked about our Platinum Coaching Program on page 5, where you do get a discount. It's our Easter special. And the discount is only $2,500, you guys, for a 6-month program where we're going to hold your hand. You're going to be able to talk to us one-on-one, really as much as you want. We've got a weekly Q&A. Keith meets with you guys once a month. Meet with me every week. We go out in the field and look at properties and so much more. You get your own dashboard filled with a bunch of
Accountability is very important.
yeah, and so it's a great program. You can talk to Keith about it. We got Sylvia in the back. Hey, Sylvia, raise your hand, Sylvia. If you guys are interested in any type of insurance product, we've got insurance products that you can build cash. I'm showing my daughter a property today. I was telling Marquise earlier, I was showing my daughter a property today where she's going to use that money in her cash value and insurance policy to hopefully, if everything works out, buy this property, and she's going to rent the property out. And she's going to return that money once she refinances back into her insurance policy, and it rinse and repeat every year. As her insurance policy, the cash value grows, she's going to take the money out. She's her own bank, takes it out tax-free, uses it for her down payment and closing costs, renovates the property, rents the property out, the BRRRR method, refinances the property, and then returns the money back. If you guys are interested in products like that give you cash value, where your money is safe, You're protected, there's a death benefit, and all the policies come with what we call living benefits, because you get sick before you die. And so if you have any chronic, critical, or terminal illnesses, that comes absolutely free with the policies. Check out Sylvia in the back. How'd I do, Sylvia? Okay. All right. All right, any other questions, you guys? Any other questions? Go ahead, Gary.
The Sunday portion of the boot camp, what are the hours?
Probably from 10 to, I'll say from 10 to 2. We're normally out of those by 2.
Usually out of the showings by noon, and then we go to lunch at noon.
Okay, yeah, so you could pick either session. I would pick one, but you guys, here's the biggest thing. And I can't say this enough. You gotta take action. You just gotta take action. Everybody in here wants to build wealth, right?
Yes.
That's why you're here. You're not here just to find out about Baltimore, okay? You're here to build wealth. What are you gonna do? When are you gonna start taking action? I would meet with Tarsha because she can tell you what you need to do to get started. She's had some people that met with her last year who bought a property using hard money. I think even started renovations. Now it's time for them to refinance into permanent financing. And guess what happened? They didn't qualify anymore. Either they couldn't qualify or the market shifted. Before you do anything, you got to meet with your lender. And meet with her, whether you choose PRMG or not. Meet with her. Kat is in the back. Raise your hand, Kat. They work together. You can talk to Kat at the end of this. But we want you guys to be successful, okay? We want you guys to be successful. Use us as a resource. Let us help you. No excuses. Your excuse is not going to be, well, you know, I'm not around the right people, or I don't have the right team, or I haven't been educated. That's not your excuse. You know what your excuse is? I haven't jumped. I haven't taken action. You can take action. We're the right team for you guys. We want you to build wealth. That's why I price everything the way I price it, to make everything affordable. Because we want you guys to be successful. You know, our success is really your success and vice versa. So let's go at it, you guys. We've got some sandwiches and chips and cookies in the back. Keith will be here. Tarsha will be right there. Kat's there. You guys need Harry. Harry's back there if you guys want to sign up for anything. Thank you guys so much for being here. Oh, Keith, tell them about the pink slip.
Oh. Hey, guys, before you leave, if you can fill out the pink forms, we always want to know what content you're interested in, so please take time out to complete the pink form.
So you guys can fill it out, but she can't because she's not open. You guys can. You guys can fill it out.
Are you learning?
What was your name again? I forgot.
Now grab a sandwich.
Apple butchers, French fries. That's right. You doing good?
Oh, you didn't end this. Got it.